With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Con Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I will be back after the game also on this site to talk about the Commanders-Eagles game. There will be a few changes next week. Not going to be a live stream next Tuesday. It's Christmas Eve. Want to spend time with family, be going to church, etc. So no live stream Tuesday, but I will have a podcast for you that comes out Tuesday morning. So you get there, and then I'll have another one for Thursday morning. So to get you ready for the Falcons game. Anyway, those are some of the updates there. Now, before I get to my 5 things, I want to get a couple of the news items out right away. So right before I recorded this, found out that the spending bill actually passed Congress. The RFK, the transfer of land from the federal government to DC that involved the RFK site was not included. So there's no return to DC as of right now. Now the Commanders can wait and just see if it gets introduced next session. That would be a few months. And if they really want to get down there, and I know they do, then maybe they wait and see, is there a shot at that point? Because it did have bipartisan support. But as of now, the spending bill was passed, no RFK provision. So that's where we said earlier in the week, looked like a really good chance for it to happen. And then it didn't. And so there you go. That's what I know with that. Anyway, so just stay tuned for that for next session. I don't know yet what the Commanders' thoughts will be as far as how long they'd want to wait and if they're willing to wait, because they do have the site at Landover, that they own the land. They know that Maryland wants them. And they know that Maryland Governor Wes Moore committed $400 million to redeveloping that area around the stadium. So anyways, that's where we stand. We'll see where it goes. All right, as far as getting on the field. So for Sunday, John Allen ruled out. They had the 21-day window that was opened earlier this week. Never thought that he would be playing against the Eagles. The plan has always seemed to be come back, practice this week, practice next week, play against the Falcons, play against the Cowboys. We'll see if it stays that way. But I really do expect him back before the finale for sure. He was out in practice today, did not have the black no contact jersey on. So that's a good sign as progress, but it just was asking too much to come back that fast, practice a couple of days and then playing a game after you've missed that much time. And for those of you who are worried about the pec, I keep hearing people talk about the pec. There are different forms of pec injuries. The tear for him was not as severe as it's been for some others. That's why he's in this position. It's not a matter of rushing back. I think if he had rushed back, he'd have come back a couple of weeks ago. But it was like I said, it was around a 20 to 25% tear from what I was told. So this has always been the path that he felt he would be on. It's not rushing back. It's getting back when it's right and healthy. So just to allay some fears. All right. So the others for Sunday, Zach Ertz, Jeremy Chin, both questionable for the game. They both obviously had the concussions last week. Both were out of the practice on Friday. Neither one of them had the black no contact jerseys on. That's a good step in their process, getting out of the protocol. Now, I think there's probably more optimism for Chin playing right now than there would be for Ertz. I think Ertz is a legit 50-50 kind of situation here. So I think for Chin, I think there's more likely a chance that he plays. But again, both are questionable. And both place kickers who missed practice on Wednesday because their wives were delivering their babies, they were both back out of practice on Friday. And what we've always been told is if Zane Gonzalez is healthy, he is the kicker. But Gonzalez was back Thursday and Friday. Greg Joseph was back today. So there you go. And also back at practice, John Bates, Sam Cosmi, they missed earlier this week with illnesses. So there you go. And it's funny because I asked one of the linemen, like, are you guys just kind of like putting Cosmi in the corner right now? He goes, no, actually they put him up front so if he's coughing or sneezing, that's going forward, not around them. So anyways, there's something going around a little bit, and it's this time of the year, man. So anyway, let's get to my 5 things I think. Number one, this is obviously a big game, and I think it's a game that you don't want to dismiss as, oh, well, it's okay if they lose because you have these other 2 games. It's a game where they can clinch a playoff spot. So this is a big game. It's also a game where, as Dan Quinn said, if you want to be a serious contender, you have to beat the heavy hitters. They have not done so this year. We know that. They have done exactly what they should. They've beaten the teams that they should beat. The only one where you could say they didn't was Dallas. Then the one contender that they really should have beaten to me was Pittsburgh. Like, that game was there for them, and that was more of a back and forth. They had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. They had some plays that I think you put them in that position now, I think they make them, right? But they didn't make them that game, and so they lost by 1. But that was a game where I think they really had that chance. The Eagles, tough matchup, and we know that. Can they do it? I know that Brian Robinson said that he thinks they're the better team. Guys should think that. Why wouldn't you think that? Why would you go into a game thinking someone else is a better team? Now, I asked our Eagles reporter, Tim McManus, was that even a topic in the Eagles locker room? Did anybody talk about it? He said it didn't come up. So now, could it be a bulletin board situation? Well, if I'm a coach, I'm going to put it up there. Of course you are. I don't think the Eagles are going to be motivated by Brian Robinson saying, oh, I think we're a better team. I think if you know what they're motivated by? They have a chance to get home field advantage in the playoffs, and they have a chance to clinch the NFCs. That's what they're motivated by. If they, and sure, I'm sure if they win the game, maybe they say something, but I don't think going in this game, it's going to provide extra motivation I'll show them. I don't think, I think I don't buy that in this case. I think the Eagles are a really good team. If they win the game, it's not because of that. It's because their roster is better. Let's just be honest here. Like, the Commanders are still building a roster. The Eagles have built a roster, and there's a difference. They built a roster that is ready, that will contend for a Super Bowl this year. They have arguably the best offensive line in football. They have a talented receiving core with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. They have a unbelievable running back in Saquon Barkley, and a quarterback who handles it all in Jalen Hurts. And is he a Pro Bowler? I don't look at him like that. I think there's a lot with him, or there's stuff that I like, but he is in a great situation, and they've created a great situation for him, and he operates it well within that. Defensively, terrific team. So the point is, they have a roster that is just better than Washington's. It does not mean that Washington can't beat them. Does not mean that at all. Because if I think Washington was in a worse spot when they played them the first time, because you're coming off a short week, a tough loss, a physical loss, going on the road. You have Jaden Daniels, who still was recovering from the after effects of the rib injury. Now, how that manifested itself, whether it was just the matter of the lost practice time or just off, he was off in that game. He's looked really good the last couple of weeks. And I know it's not the same level of defense. He still looked really good. And he looks way more like himself, and the energy that he has. And your body gets worn down too. Everybody's does. So anyways, they're in a better position to do that. You have Marshawn Lattimore, who is out there. They didn't have him in the first game. So they're in a good spot. So they can do, and the point of that is, it was 12-10. They're driving in the fourth quarter, and they have a 4th and 2 that they didn't execute. Or they could have kicked the field goal, yes, but if you execute that play, if you don't bobble the snap, you execute the play right, you probably pick up the first down, you control the ball for a few more minutes, and maybe you still lose, but it's certainly a different game. So anyways, point is, they were right there. They have a chance to do that. But the Eagles do have the better roster. However, this is a chance to do something they haven't done all year. That's why this is a big game. Now, is it a make or break game? No, but it's a game to make a statement. And that statement would be like, you're not only can you make the playoffs, but maybe when you're there, excuse me, you can threaten some teams if they're not careful. And I do think when you have Jaden Daniels, you're going to feel good going to the playoffs regardless, because he's the kind of guy who can do things that can hurt teams. They know that. We know that. But this is also a chance to possibly clinch a playoff spot. If they win, Atlanta loses, it's a done deal. And you'd also need Seattle or the Rams to lose, one of those teams. So that's how, if that scenario happens, Seattle or the Rams lose, and then Washington wins, and Atlanta loses, then it's a wrap. So, that's how they can clinch playoffs. And it's, because you're kind of leaving it up too much for grabs. Or I shouldn't say for grabs, but if they don't lose this game, which again, it's not the end of the world. However, it is a great opportunity for them for many reasons. And you can't like, it's okay. It's fine as a fan. I think that you can't, as a player, go in there thinking, well, it's okay, because I don't think they think like that. So I think that's why I think I like what Robinson said, just because that should be your mindset. And you don't need to defer to any other team. Why not go out there and win this game? You're at home. This is a huge home game for you if you can go out and do something, especially. And then, but if you don't, then you have Atlanta here next week. We don't know what it's going to look like with Michael Penix. Then you have Dallas on the road. They've been a problem for this team, right? But who knows what they're going to be doing at that time. So anyway, big game. The Commanders have lost to Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. Those are the four best teams they played. Now Tampa they really didn't have a shot in that game. Baltimore close, but Baltimore controlled that game. Pittsburgh, like I said, I feel like they should have won that game. And Philly, they had a chance to certainly make it. I think that Philly was still the better team, clearly. But they were in position to do something in the fourth quarter and just didn't execute when they needed to. And like I said, I don't think they played their best on offense by any means. And they still had an opportunity in the fourth quarter. And we'll get into more about that, down in a minute. So anyways, that's the first one. Number two, I think Jaden Daniels become a good red zone quarterback. And there's been a few reasons. His improvement has been very evident. The first 8 games in the red zone, 14 for 29, 4 touchdowns, first 8 games. Last 6 games, 17 for 23, 9 touchdowns. So there's a couple of things with that. I remember, I'm going to go back to Griffin III's rookie year, and he had improved in the red zone throughout the year. I remember looking at that and say, oh, I remember asking Mike Shanahan, did he become a better passer there? He said, well, it wasn't really that. It was just that the threat of his legs running really kind of regulated the defense. So it was more about them being able to anticipate what the defense would, knowing what the defense would do and playing accordingly and getting, so it really kind of simplified things for them as an offense because you knew what they were going to do. In this case, I really, everybody I talked to said it's a matter of Daniels' progression. And like there are plays early in the year against Cleveland, for example, where he throws his interception to Zach Ertz. It's a zone side. You have man side on the other, and you got Terry McLaurin matched one-on-one. In that situation, you want to go to McLaurin. You've got to get out there, see it, and then get to the other side, right? If you're going to go there, oh, it's zone, get over here. And that's something he wasn't doing. He's doing that now. And I think the touchdown pass to McLaurin last week, the 3-yarder, is an example of that. Like you had a bubble to the right with Zacchaeus. Well, there's zone. I think it was zone. But anyways, not open regardless. So pull it. You got your tight end in the middle. It's running the crosser, send it, not there. And then you got McLaurin running the crosser, the other way. He's there, but it was the speed and the speed of the progression for Daniels that to me stood out, and that to them stood out. As Cliff Kingsbury told me, he's playing fast in there. That's why he's improved. And on that play, like he's got McLaurin, but not only does he find him, get to his third read, throws him a really nice ball. And that, McLaurin was like, he knew he had to keep getting wide of that, or maybe maintain his leverage there or his advantage, because he knew that there wasn't a huge window there, but it was a good throw by Daniels, but it was the progression of the speed to get to that. And that's an example of something he's been doing is getting in there. And it's like, it was one player told me he may have missed some of these reads early in the year because he'd worked the zone side. He said now he's a lot more comfortable working where he needs to work. And so I think that's something that has stood out for sure. And then the other thing is, one person told me, it's like, I mentioned to him, like, well, McLaurin has been a bigger deal this year. And it's like, they couldn't believe how little he was used in the red zone in the past. And it's like, I mean, this year he's like one of the best receivers in the red zone. I think it's like 7 or 9 touchdowns, I think, in the red zone this year, which is just, as someone said, it's crazy how they didn't use him in the past. And then, but I think for Daniels, there's so much of this goes back to his preparation. Like, this is a guy who prepares as you wouldn't believe how many times I talk to coaches or players and just how they marvel at what this guy knows. And just, like he'll correct Kingsbury sometimes in a practice. Like Kingsbury might say something, no, you might say, oh, you got to be over here. And Dan said, no, he's supposed to be over here. And, on this other side, like that kind of stuff pays off. It's why he works a ton. He's going there 3 days a week, doing the walkthroughs Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with Kingsbury in the bubble. I mean, it's a lot. And that's the result is this. And that's, anyways, it's different than what other quarterbacks that I've covered especially at this age. But someone else said he's like a veteran quarterback, and he's been like that for a while. Like things that he checks into, et cetera. It's stuff that others, again, if you played in the league for several years, you do this. It might be a basic run check, but for a rookie to do that at times, especially early in the year when this was happening, that's where guys are like, okay, he's different with this. So, but anyways, it's led to red zone improvement, and that needs to help the offense on Sunday. By the way, I did want to go back to the number one thing too. So I forgot to mention one thing. It's about like just how these players are approaching it and why it's important to have certain leaders like a Bobby Wagner. So after the Sunday game against Saints, he went back to the facility to watch film. And because as somebody asked him, like, well, you're going back there, he goes, hey, it's playoff push. That's how they're approaching this kind of a game. So just wanted to kind of make sure I pointed that out because I think that's kind of important. I think you'd probably like to hear that. Anyway, safety Derek Forrest. I think he did a really good job staying ready. And I think he, played a lot against the Saints. And I think I think he can feel really good about what he showed this year. He hasn't played, right? He hasn't been a factor. He waited, when every time I talked to him, like, I'm doing good. Like he kept his head up. There was no moping. I mean, it's an impressive, I know that's his job, right? But I tell you what, man, I think people that you work with, are they going to handle every situation great if they're not getting the work they want or don't have the job they want? Well, no. And the same in an NFL locker room, like these are guys, they know how short these NFL careers are. So you have a year where you're not able to get on the field much, it's going to hurt. He's been inactive, but he stayed ready. And I think he deserves a lot of credit. He talked about how disappointing it was to not be on the field. I mean, it's hard. He's a guy who was starting. He's had injuries, had to come back from that. And now you're watching others play it. And, said the door opened for him. And it's funny because there were plays that he said that he felt bad about because like I make that play if I had more reps. It's not a complaint. It's just about knocking that rust off. And there was one on a touchdown where he said they went in motion. He changed his alignment because of the emotion, and then that put him in a worse spot to defend the play. He said if he had more reps against that or something, then you're not going to change your alignment and put yourself in better position to make the play. Now, again, that wasn't a complaint. It was a matter of fact, like, because I even asked him, he said that there were times you could tell that where he had that rust. So, well, give me an example. And that was the example. So it's not him complaining about it. It's a matter of fact. And so, but I do think, and it's funny because like these guys get paid a lot of money, but this stuff matters to them. And I'm going to tell you, like, so I asked him like what it meant to him. And again, the emotions of that really matter because then and I even told like, you should feel pretty good about yourself after what, having to endure this. And again, it's not like there are worse things in life to be than an NFL backup safety, right? For perspective, we all know that, but this is still his life, his career, and he handled it in the right way. And this is what he said about the emotions of that game.
I shed a tear after the game because I was just I felt blessed because I know the situation I've been in. Last year I broke my shoulder. This year, I just haven't played a lot, and I was just like, man, it felt great to be back out there. Like I really felt blessed to be back out there. It felt great.
But your dad was happy.
Oh no, for sure. He called me after the game, man. He was like, I seen you was out there a lot. I was like, yeah. He was very excited.
Good. Well, good. So there you go. This stuff matters to him, and I think he's a guy that's, you can feel good rooting for. So because of just how we handle it. So we'll see what happens going forward. Number 4, I think they're going to have to move Terry McLaurin around a little bit. How's that? Right? The first game, obviously, they did not do that. In the first game, he ran 22 routes on the left side, 3 on the right side. 0 targets on the left side. That's where Quinyon Mitchell was. But it wasn't just Mitchell. It was the linebackers dropping. It was safeties over the top. Mitchell played to his help extremely well. It wasn't like Mitchell just got up in his face and locked him down. He's just a good, smart, young corner who knows how to play to his help and to his leverage. And the Eagles had a great plan to take McLaurin away. It's not a surprise that he got his targets on the other side because, you can move him around a little bit. And they've definitely started moving around since that game. So, since that game, he's been on the left side 70 times, right side 25 times, 8 catches on the right side, 12 on the left. So in the last 2 games, this is even more telling. 40 routes on the left side, 22 on the right. So they've increased it. Last week, I don't know the numbers for the motion, but it certainly seemed like, and he even agreed that he was in motion more than he had been in the past. So in the last 2 games, 9 targets on each side. To me, that's the key. It's not just lining up on the right side, it's getting you targets on the right side. 6 catches on the right. He only has 18 catches on the right side all season. So a third of them may come in the last 2 games. So just 9 catches on the left side. So really good numbers for him. But as he said, against the Saints, when he's going in motion, all that, he could tell and hear the confusion, or at least, the attempts at communication when he was in motion, because they didn't know exactly where he was going to go or what he was going to do. So I would look for them to do certainly more of that in this game. And, he could tell with New Orleans that it sometimes threw them off when he was doing it. Now, if you're playing a lot of man and you got press man and you get up on them, well, it doesn't matter which side you're on. You're going to run a go route or a fade or something like that, right? So, and he can win those against anybody. But when you're playing zone and you're mixing your coverages, then it does become an issue. And so that's why he's going to need to. And in fact, because I've had these talks with him, and he's like, the one game where it really did hurt him being stationary was that first Eagles game. And so I'll be curious to see how Kingsbury plays off that, because, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, so I think that's going to be a big key. You have to get him moved, because the 2 guys who can really hurt the Eagles, well, 2 of the guys, certainly Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, because those are the playmakers in this game for Washington. And they're the ones where you can create some big plays. And also, the other thing, and especially because we don't know if Ertz is going to play, but the one thing they did do a couple of times in that first game was play off of McLaurin, like the Washington would. So if they were going to widen here, you got to get someone in a hitch over here, like, right? So they were able to do that a couple of times. So if you're you can move him around, get them getting going on him, and maybe find something backside too that they were not anticipating, and because their eyes are now shifting to McLaurin. So, and they clearly felt like they wanted to take him out of the game, because if he's the guy, they know that he's the guy they need to get going. So Jaden Daniels knows he's the guy that he needs to get him the ball early. So whether or not they always have success doing it, they know it, and the other teams know it too, because that's why the Eagles defended him the way he did. In the red zone, it was a lot of bracketing, and other times I'm telling you, just the widen of the drops, etc. So number 5, I think the Eagles are going to be a really hard team to beat. We know that. So let's go over certain things. So obviously, what do you do to stop them? They can pass the ball, they can run the ball. Well, you got to stop the run. Like, there's no doubt. I think you talk to anybody, almost anybody in that locker room, it's about, you got to stop Saquon Barkley. So how do you do that? And that's going to be the tough thing, because in the first game, they did a solid job against him in the first 3 quarters. The problem is with Barkley, this is who he is. Like, teams stop him, but he is there. They are relentless with him, and there's enough talent around that you've got to defend other things, that he's going to break one eventually, because it's just what he's done all year. And I think you can go, like, in that first game, he had the 2 touchdown runs in the fourth quarter. I'm like, sometimes it's a matter of, you have to be, and I was talking to one of the players about this, and he was, to be honest, he's still kind of pissed, like, or still incredulous that why the F would the Giants let him go there? It was just, they're still scratching their head on that one too, as I think many are. I understand with the Giants, the injuries, whatever. He's a really, really good player, and it's good to have really, really good players, and it only made the Eagles a lot better. So, like, for example, it's funny because, with Marshawn Lattimore, can you play more single high? Well, yeah. With one of the touchdowns, the last touchdown he had, I think I forget how long was that one, where it was single high safety look, but what happened is Johnny Newton fell, it got knocked down on the play. That leaves a big gap. And then Frankie Louvu coming off the edge, tried to go around the backfield. I think probably kind of a bad angle with it. And that just led a big enough gap, and then he was off to the races. So, that didn't help. But overall, they did a pretty good job on him. I'm looking for my other notes here where he had a touchdown to see like what it was that he did. But bottom line, the other one was 6-man box. Armstrong gets upfield. Gap. He got a little bit too far upfield because it's 3rd down and 3. I think they thought they were going to throw the ball, and and it just was that again another single high man coverage look, and Payne doubled, and then Wagner had too big of a gap to fill. So it's just, but this getting too far upfield in that situation was going to create a big gap, and that's all he needs. So, but by and large, they did a pretty good job on him. And so I think if you can do that again, but it's got to be a good job on him all game, or you can't let him have 2 of those kind of runs, right? And so I think that's the danger with him is if you get a little bit too inside. I mean, shoot, sometimes I'm watching their Eagles games and you see a hole that's clogged and he just makes a terrific jump cut to the outside. And if you're not maintaining your containment outside, he's going to bounce outside. That happened, there was one run where they lost contain outside on him, and it's like then he's going to make you pay. So, but you've got to stop him and put Jalen Hurts in position where he has to beat you with his arm. And so, can he do that? Yeah, he can. They have weapons, and he's a good quarterback. But if you, it's a no brainer as far as like what you want to do. So, and then again, so with Lattimore though, it does give you the ability to do more single highs if you want to get more in the box. I will say, I think it was like 19 of the 40 runs against the Eagles in the first game were single high safety looks. But I asked the player, like, does that help? How much does that help? He goes, you think a top 3 cornerback might help us? Well, it was kind of obviously joking, but like, yeah, that's kind of what he is. And so they know how good he can be. But really, he's here to help against the pass game, right? And against AJ Brown, against Devontae Smith. Now, the last time he played against the Eagles. Lattimore did against the Eagles and AJ Brown a couple years ago. Wasn't like he was just assigned to AJ Brown. He wasn't. In fact, like when I was watching it, he's staying mostly on the right side. He did get matched up against AJ Brown a couple times, but he also matched up against Devontae Smith. Also matched up against Dallas Goedert. Also had a pick 6 on Gardner Minshew. So. They played a lot of zone in that game. So it's not like it was this great indicator of what's going to happen here. I don't know if they're going to have him travel. Do they need to have him travel? Because Mikey Samuel did a good job against AJ Brown in that first game as well. And I think, one of the things that when you watch Lattimore play is just he's a different corner, right? And again, he covers a tight end in that game because he's got strength and he doesn't back down from situations. He covers Devontae Smith. And I just like the way, he'll press. He doesn't always have to jam. Maybe he jams you a couple yards down the field. On the slant, there was a slant that he picked off. I think it was to AJ Brown. It was just like the way he plays it. He's shading inside on Brown. I don't know why Minshew threw it, but he did. It's Gardner Minshew, wasn't Jalen Hurts, but still, it was the positioning of Lattimore in that play when he was with the Saints that was really stood out. But obviously a very good corner. It's going to help them because he is that good. And they will not shy from throwing at him because like the Saints did last week, because it's Jalen Hurts throwing to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. I don't think he's going to be intimidated by a whole lot, for sure. But I think a big key here will be, getting the box, making sure that you're in your gaps, just basic stuff, right? And swarming tackles, all the cliches that you want about it, but you do have to get him stopped. And I think you have to make Hurts beat you now. Um, that's what you have to do. And if you can't, like, here's one thing a couple things to know about Hurts. And like, is he a good quarterback? Yes. But he's playing behind the best line of football. He's got really good talent around him. He has the most time to pass in the NFL of any quarterback, most time in the pocket of any NFL quarterback. So there's a lot that he can do. And it's just like not as under duress as others. He can get outside. He's blessed with the ability to run. And so he can get to that as well if you need it. And it's funny because his numbers outside the pocket, his completion percentage is only this 49%, which isn't that great. In the pocket, it's a lot higher, but then it's also style of throws. But because these guys know, they want to keep him contained in the pocket, right? And the key is giving him some different looks, making sure that he can't get to his primary receiver. Because if you can take that away, he's going to hold the ball a little bit. Like you still see that. I think he's done a nice job this year, right? But there are definitely times you see him not getting rid of the ball on not planning getting rid of it. There's not that same rhythm. And sometimes you're holding the ball a little bit longer. You're making a big play because of it, but you do hold it a little bit longer at times. So, um, but again, they can do things. They like to run. They like to run the inside slant. They like the crossers. They like pivot routes, which are going to play off that slant, and you see that work a lot. They will get the no huddle runs going. Dan Orlovsky on ESPN did a nice breakdown on that that he put up on Twitter too. So they like to do a lot of late motion. They have Gainwell in the backfield is a dangerous player there. He hurt Washington the first time. That's a guy that definitely hurt him as well in some subtle but not so subtle ways. There are times too where they're going to get to different looks, like in the red zone. They had one play where um, you got trips left, you got Devontae, Jahan, and AJ Brown, and you had the one time you had Devontae's on the inside, AJ Brown's on the outside, Jahan Dot's in the middle. Jahan's going to set a pick for AJ's coming off on a slant. He's wide open, but Hurts goes to um, Devontae Smith running out to the flat in the end zone, and he's there too. Now AJ Brown was wide open. Devontae Smith was open, and he hit the open guy for a touchdown. Nice play. Well, then I saw another game where they started from a bunch formation, but then they motion out and they ran AJ Brown this time ran the Devontae Smith route, and Devontae Smith ran the AJ Brown route, and they scored another touchdown. And it was this time Devontae Smith. If I'm AJ Brown, I'm like, what the hell you doing, dude? Because I was open here too. But he's like, well, now you throw the slant, but it was there. The point is, they get to this stuff and they will set a pick, and that was Jahan Dotson's role in those plays because he hasn't done a whole lot for them, anyways. That makes them dangerous in the red zone because they can do so much, and I think that's why this offense is so tough to defend. Which means you've got to get your offense going. AJ Brown in the slants, and he does a really good job attacking the defensive backs. That's why it's so important to have Lattimore here because I think he's not going to get knocked back on his heels on that. He's so patient. He mirrors the routes well. He knows what routes are coming. It's just really, he's honestly, man, the first game, it was fun to watch. I haven't watched a corner, enjoyed watching a corner like that in a long time to see what makes him so good. And I think it was evident to see that. So, but again, it does come down to the O-line, Barkley, and, can they get to Hurts a little bit? Can they create some hesitation for him? We'll see, but that's going to be a key. And then defensively, everything starts up front for them. And one of the advantages that the Eagles have, I'll be curious to see how they defend Washington this time, because in the first game, 5 times they sent 5 pass rushers or more. 5. That's it. That's not much at all. Now, so will they do that same thing again? That worked. They were able to have 7 in coverage, certainly took away big plays, and they were able to keep Jaden Daniels mostly contained with that. Felt like their pass rush discipline was pretty good. So can they do that again? Will they take that same strategy? Because that's going to be a big key. I'll be curious to see what Vic Fangio does. He has had some games where he sent 5-man pressures about 10 or 11 times. And against Bryce Young, he did that, kind of mixed results. I think with Daniels, I think he can hurt you a little bit more in that way. So you may not want to do that. But I think also the key is getting that run game going with Brian Robinson, because they really weren't able to do that the first time. Here's the other thing. The first time, like Austin Eckler had a lot of production in that game, and Zach Ertz was helpful in that game. So without those guys, what are you going to do? And now I don't know, maybe Ertz still plays. I shouldn't say without him because I don't know that yet. Like I said, 50-50, but we know Eckler's out. We know Noah Brown is out. But they've done a good job this year of creating openings for everybody. And so you're going to need contributions from Zacchaeus or a Jamison Crowder or a McCaffrey, maybe. Ben Sinnott, can you get him there? I was talking to Sinnott the other day about some of this and just like what he's learned from Zach Ertz. And there was nothing really specific, but it's more about like some angles and some of the route savviness. And Ertz is really good at sharing this stuff. So like that's helped him. Will that help them in this game? He's not the same kind of guy as Ertz, but can he get you a few catches? Can John Bates get you a few catches? Right. So, but do you can use more 2 backs and maybe 3 receivers, or 2 receivers, 1 tight end, and 2 backs just to get your best on the field to make it a threat. But you do have to be able to run the ball. And the Eagles hurt them. Like Jalen Carter is a terrific defensive lineman. But what the Eagles also do, and one things that these linemen will talk about, is some of the games the Eagles run up front. Now, Jalen Carter typically doesn't run those games. They want him just pushing his guy forward. Like he's probably not going to do it, but you will get the games elsewhere. So the key for the offensive line will be knowing when those games are going to occur, because if you do, then you can hit off that. And so, that's something to watch for this well. How do they handle those games up front? Because I think it's going to determine a lot of the success thereafter. And if they can do it, then you got a chance. Like, you need to be able to run the ball. It doesn't have to be, Tennessee type game, but it can't be, it's got to be staying ahead of the chains. Like, if you get into the third and longs against these guys consistently, you're going to have problems. And that's a good second. That's a really good secondary. It's a good back seven. It's a good defense. So, I think you can look at every spot, like, Zach Bond and Kobe Dean do a good job at linebacker. And, they play with some speed, right? And they play fast. The Cooper DeJean, Darius Slay, Mitchell, and the safeties are good too. So, like, that's a good all around defense, but they're not impenetrable. And you watch, like, shoot, I was talking to Philly station, like, well, what makes you think, that Washington Cup here and win? Like, gee, Christmas, man, I just watched Carolina have a Xavier Legette drop pass from doing so. So some of the things too, and I was watching the Rams against them. They beat, like, this is a really good team, but watching the Rams at times against them, and they were moving the ball. They weren't always scoring though. That's the problem. But one thing they were doing well at times is a lot of late motion, just to create movement, and with the defense create, test their communication. I think that's something, certainly to watch. I liked, the other thing is too, some quick snaps. Like, Washington will run tempo stuff, but I'm talking about not just tempo, but, there were times where the Rams ran it and they might only get 5 or 6 yards. But man, 2nd and 5 is a hell of a lot better than 2nd and 9. So they'd get up to the line, quick snap. You see the Eagles players were not in position to do anything. So you're getting a free 5 yards a time because they were still kind of like getting to their spots or maybe turning and communicating, whatever. But that late motion, some tempo, can you get that going? And here's the other thing too, because Cliff Kingsbury talked about this week as well, which is, that he said maybe in a short week, maybe he put in too much in the game plan. Well, since then, they've kind of, I wouldn't say they've pared it down, but maybe reduced how much he's putting in the game plan. I think it's like you see maybe these guys playing a little bit faster again. And one of the things too that I'll be curious to see going forward is how they build on this year, because they'll have Jaden Daniels obviously another year. Most of the guys will be back here next year. So I will be curious to see where it goes in the future, because you can start to do more with them. And I think what's helped them now is reducing some of what they're asking them to do, and it's kept them playing fast. And like, this is a good coaching staff. And I haven't talked about Joe Whitt, but one of the things I always like about him is I think he's very sincere. And I love just how his mentality is. Like, he's not going to get caught up in, oh, your defense isn't here, so you can't be expected to do this. For him, that's BS. And he even said, like, my job isn't to tell them what to do. My job is to make sure they do it. Like, that's just, I've been around some coaches who say that stuff. I don't think they believe it. I think because in the back, they might be pointing here, here, and here. I think this guy truly, but everything I've heard from is that it's very sincere with how he is, how he takes accountability. You ask him, like, what could you do better? He will tell you what he can do. He will tell you, maybe in practice, I'm not doing this enough, or I'm doing too much of this, not enough of that. Because like, he's like, the first thing he does after a game is he'll go and look and see, okay, why didn't these plays work? Was it technique? Was it the player? Was it my call? And so he'll break that down, but he's looking at all of it, because he's not going to just, trust me, man. Some coaches will just blame the players. I have covered those guys, and they will always blame the players. And this is not that kind of guy. So, anyways, I just wanted to point that out. It's a little bit of a side. It really doesn't mean anything to that part, but I do think it's indicative of the mindset he has and the mindset you create in players. And I think that's important as well. It's just, this is a really strong leadership team. I think that's why I think, like, if you want to hang your hat on something for this game, I think it goes back to that, the kind of players and the mentality they have. Will it be enough? Well, you got to make plays. You're going to have to, obviously get a turnover too, but you're going to have to run the ball better. But Jaden has got to be Jaden. And we saw that last week. I know the Saints aren't the Eagles, but it's more about what is he showing. He looks way more in rhythm, over 80% passes the last 2 weeks. He had that stretch where, again, was it the rib? Was it the lack of practice time? Was it all of it? Probably all of it. So, but now he's in a much better spot. He absolutely feels seems refreshed. And again, he's just a smart quarterback who continues to learn. Because of him, you got a chance. I don't know. Like, I think this will be a good game. I think it's going to be very hard for them to win. Can they win? Of course. And I think you want to go into any game. Is there a path to winning in this game? The answer is yes. Is it really hard? The answer is also yes. The Eagles might be the best team in the NFC. There's a reason for that. They have a damn good roster. And I don't think you're going to sneak up on them. And I don't think it has anything to do with what Brian Robinson said. Anyways, folks, that's it for me. So I will be back after the Commanders play the Eagles, and should be a fun one. And isn't it fun to be talking about football in December rather than, hey, if they get the 12th pick, they could look at this position to draft. Way more fun to talk about this stuff. So with that, that's it. Have a good weekend, and I will talk to you next time.